Based on his price, the player I'm bringing you guys in today's video might be the easiest buy low I have done this entire offseason. But before we get to that, do me a massive favor. Go ahead and smash that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. And I want you to comment down below, just before we get into the video, who do you think it is? Who's the easiest buy low that I've potentially been able to bring to you guys the entire offseason? Pause the video, comment. And just before we get into that player, do you want my rankings and everyone from the Flock Fantasy crew? Go ahead and use our code LAND, L-A-N-D, at flockfantasy.com/land. Not only do you get everyone's articles and rankings on the site, but if you choose that Mother Flocker tier, you're gonna unlock a DM to personal advice to us from this channel. But without further ado, there is a couple sleepers from the 2023 NFL draft class that I have been consistently talking about all throughout the offseason, and one of their statuses have changed. This player got better than anticipated draft capital, so that was great. The only issue after the NFL draft in projecting his value was the fact that there was still a big-time veteran player on his team at his position that had not moved yet. Today, I am thrilled to tell you guys that that veteran is gone and has cleared a pathway for opportunities. I am talking about a player who could potentially start for his team in year one and is currently ranked 82 at his position. There are 81 other players at his position ahead of him in the community rankings. I am deep diving today to try and find one of the cheapest values I've ever brought. That player is wide receiver Michael Wilson. Hang in there with me for a second. Let me tell you why this is the easiest buy in all of Dynasty right now. According to the community, he is ranked as a wide receiver 82. I genuinely do not think I've ever brought a cheaper option to you guys than the wide receiver 82. According to the Flock Fantasy website, expert consensus, which is all of us, and then averaged out, he's a wide receiver 77. In my rankings, guys, he's my wide receiver 54. And let me just explain. First, let's talk about Michael Wilson's time as a collegiate player. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, stayed in the state of California, and declared for Stanford. He broke out in 2019 as a sophomore at the age of 19, where he contributed to over 21% of Stanford's total receiving offense. After that, it was tough for him, honestly. Like, he dealt with multiple injuries to his foot, derailed his production. Stanford as an offense overall was really, really bad. Injuries, lack of production, fifth-year senior, these are all knocks on his profile, but the talent is undeniable. And if you're so buried in a spreadsheet, you might not be able to see that about Michael Wilson. Second, let's talk about his performance at the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl put Michael Wilson on the map. In previous years, we've seen plenty of wide receivers stand out and make a name for themselves at the Senior Bowl. How about Christian Watson? You know, about a year ago, Michael Pittman Jr., Terry McLaurin, who was a 3rd-round pick, Cooper Kupp, who was a 3rd-round pick, Hunter Renfrow, Deebo Samuel, Michael Gallup, just to name a few. Before the Senior Bowl, Michael Wilson wasn't being talked about by anybody. Nobody. Let me know if I'm wrong. Like, drop a link in the comments. He was the consensus 340th player in the draft, meaning he would have likely gone undrafted based off of pre-Senior Bowl hype. You can see early in February, after the Senior Bowl took place, he skyrocketed because of his dominant performance, and NFL teams took note. Words are hard, right? And I'll leave a link below from someone named Scott Kennedy where you guys can view some of his best plays at the Senior Bowl. You're not going to get the entire picture, but I thought Scott did a really good job of capturing him as a player and his performance at the Senior Bowl. But this is what teams fell in love with. Firstly, they fell in love with the size. 6'2", 213 pounds. There is not much of that in this class. This is one of the most undersized classes in the last decade, I would say. But with that size also comes his contested catch ability, and that absolutely showed up at the Senior Bowl. They also fell in love with his overall athleticism. He scored a 9.55 out of 10 relative athletic score. That ranked 139th of over 3,000 wide receivers from 1987 to 2023 in that sample size. That's a 35-year sample size, and he tested better than over 95% of wide receiver prospects in the past 35 years. And absolutely, his best attribute without a question is his release package and his route running ability. He has a great explosive score as well, which absolutely lines up with that film. His release package, I don't know how many of you guys would be able to follow me all the way back to when Michael Thomas was coming out of Ohio State, but it reminds me a lot of what Michael Thomas brought into the NFL. Just a very solid base to work with, specifically off the line of scrimmage. He can get open in the snap of an eye. Very quick feet, very twitchy player. It doesn't take him much to get to his top speed. In my opinion, he could absolutely develop into being one of the premier route runners at the next level. Now, I have lower expectations, but keep in mind, guys, we're talking about the wide receiver 82. I'm saying I see a little bit when we're talking about ceiling, a little bit of Michael Thomas there. And let's talk about the landing spot. He lands with the Arizona Cardinals. They drafted him in the 3rd round. I was hoping and praying he would get drafted in the top 4 rounds, just like my guy Xavier Hutchinson. Xavier didn't get the draft capital, but Michael Wilson did. He got better than anticipated for me. He went in the 3rd round. I was very excited about that. Now, present day, okay, the Cardinals have just released DeAndre Hopkins, who was a target hog. DeAndre Hopkins was averaging 10.7 targets per game last year. That is gone off the team. You do not have to compete with DeAndre Hopkins anymore. The path is a lot clearer. Not only that, but guys, there's a brand new head coach, brand new GM, and the only wide receiver that they have physically brought in as a combo is Michael Wilson. This is the guy that they've drafted with their first opportunity to add to the wide receiver room. Now you look at this depth chart, Hollywood Brown is the clear wide receiver 1. I brought Hollywood Brown about a week or so ago now as a buy low right before DeAndre Hopkins was released. I hope he went out and took advantage of that. And Hollywood Brown's going to be the number 1. The connection that he has with Kyler Murray back from even the Oklahoma days in the first 6 weeks of last season, it's unquestionable. He will be the number 1 for the foreseeable future. But outside of Hollywood Brown, this is where it gets really interesting. You've got Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch, almost like Greg Dortch, like Greg Dulcich. Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch. Those are the only people that you're really competing with for targets in the wide receiver room. So here's how I imagine this wide receiver core is going to operate in 2023. You got Hollywood Brown as your wide receiver 1. He's going to play outside. He's going to play a little bit in the slot. Your wide receiver 2A is likely Rondale Moore to start the season. He'll play mostly in the slot. He played 66.3% in the slot his first 2 years in the NFL. He'll play a little bit outside, but look, at his size, I think he'll probably be mostly in the slot. And then you have to ask yourself, is Greg Dortch going to keep Michael Wilson off the field? If you don't know anything about Michael Wilson, then you might say, yeah, he probably will. Look at the fancy points he put up in limited opportunities last year. But that's a very limited picture, a very limited way to look at it. I would say that the wide receiver 2B, kind of outside your Z, your Y, at times X if Hollywood's in the slot, will be Michael Wilson. Look, I absolutely loved Rondale Moore's film out of Purdue. Loved it. Such a fun player to watch. But if we're 100% honest, you and me, for 1 second, let's connect here, okay? There are clear limitations for Rondale Moore as a wide receiver in the NFL. Tell me if I'm wrong. Comment down below. Am I wrong? We can all agree, right? At 5'7", 180 pounds, it's unlikely he's going to be super successful outside. So Rondale Moore has his limitations. Greg Dortch is a smaller player. He's an undrafted free agent journeyman who's done well. But Michael Wilson's ceiling as a route runner is incredible. Again, he can be a premier top 15 type route runner in the NFL. The way he can utilize his body and get open, I mean, he genuinely can be one of the best route runners, top 10 or so in the NFL. And if you can get open, you are going to earn targets. We have seen that year after year after year after year, decade after decade. If you can get open, you will earn targets for a team. And let's talk about the quarterback play for 1 second. I think this is why Michael Wilson is so cheap right now. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was already released. He's still in the 80s rankings for wide receivers, despite being drafted in the 3rd round. But Kyler Murray's going to be back. And when Kyler Murray is back, Michael Wilson will have competent quarterback play. You can hate Kyler Murray all you want, but he is a competent quarterback at minimum. And while I believe Kyler Murray is the future of this team, others think it's going to be Caleb Williams. Others think it's going to be Drake May. Okay, well, whoever it is, you're going to have competent quarterback play. I think we can all agree. And the last thing I'll say here today is you cannot beat this price, guys. Again, I don't think I've ever brought a cheaper option than the wide receiver 82 as a buy low. Remember, last week, maybe you haven't watched the video, maybe you have, I brought Josh Downs as someone that I was concerned about, someone that I thought if you got the right package, it might be wise to sell. You can go ahead and watch that video. It's on our page, and I'll try and link it if I remember. But I go into a bunch of depth as to why I'm concerned. Guys, Josh Downs and Michael Wilson were both drafted in the 3rd round. But Michael Wilson is ranked almost 40 spots lower than Josh Downs. He is so cheap. So let's look at a couple players that you could start a conversation around to get Michael Wilson. This is not a finishing line. This is a starting point. Start a conversation and see how cheap you can get them. See what it would take, because it's not going to take all that much, I don't imagine. Players that you can start a conversation with: Zay Jones, Kenneth Gainwell, Curtis Samuel, Isaiah Hodgins. How about Deuce Vaughn? The guy in your league who's a Cowboys fan who was ecstatic to see on Instagram that his dad called him and drafted him. I mean, go get Michael Wilson for Deuce Vaughn. Go get Michael Wilson for Kayshon Boutte, drafted in the 6th round. There's a 3-round difference. Do I need to talk historically about how important that is? Sean Tucker is ranked like 5 to 6 spots away from Michael Wilson in Keep Trade Cut right now, and he's an undrafted rookie. Go send Chuba Hubbard. Maybe do a deal involving Greg Dortch in a 4th-round pick. KJ Osborne, Terrace Marshall, Daniel Bellinger. Right now, the pick compensation, you're looking at the 308 to the 401, somewhere around there. And in my Dynasty rookie rankings, since the NFL draft, right after it ended, I had Michael Wilson ranked as the 301. And I only feel more confident about that today, now that DeAndre Hopkins is not on that team. I myself have drafted him at the 307 in a rookie draft. And I've seen him in a lot of my leagues go even in the 4th round. I didn't have enough capital to get into those drafts to be in contention to draft him. But man, he is so cheap. Last thing I'll say is, if you have drafted Michael Wilson in a 12-team Dynasty rookie draft, tell me what pick you got him. I want to know in the comments below, because I'm telling you guys, like, when I talk about the best taxi, see what happens type player, no risk, this is the definition of it. The prices you are paying for the wide receiver 82, there is not a single scenario in which you buy him and you regret it. He could bust. It doesn't matter. He's the wide receiver 82. So look, the knock against him, quarterback play, that will be fixed. The knock against him is the injuries. A lot of players have been injured in the past, right? Injuries are hard to predict. Other knock against him, 5th-year senior. That is because of the injuries. He's an older player, but again, we've seen names who have blown up at the Senior Bowl and ended up being pretty damn good, and they were older players, a la Terry McLaurin I mentioned, a la Cooper Kupp. So look, am I sitting here saying Michael Wilson's gonna be a freaking superstar? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there's a legitimate chance that Michael Wilson could be a flex option for your team in the next couple years. And you're paying basically waiver wire prices almost to get this guy, 4th-round prices. So, hey, I think this is an incredible buy. Maybe I'm too into this player. You let me know in the comments below, but don't miss out. Go buy him, and then I want you to tell me in the comments below what you bought him for. All love. I'll see you guys in the next video. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.